G'day and welcome to another episode of Perth Property Insider. I'm your host, Jared Mann, and today I'm back with part 2 of our inside story, chatting to Adam Nyeholt of Rise Property Buyers, talking about rising above our mistakes. Today we'll be going into lots of interesting stuff to do with Adam's recent project in Leederville. It's going to be exciting to unpack that one. We're also going to reflect back on how he'd start again if he was back at the beginning. And we'll also talk about what we see for the year ahead in the Perth property market. So it's going to be a really interesting episode. Let's go inside.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management specialists servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here is your host, Jared Mann.
So tell us about a recent purchase or something that you've bought for your clients. Just take us through some of the...
So I guess this is one of my own that we bought in probably December 2020. So it was a development site in Leederville. We bought that one for $980,000 and there was 15 other offers at the time that we had to beat. I think the agent put it on there from offers from $799 from memory, way undervalued. But that obviously drummed up a lot of interest, and a lot of people were fighting over that one because it had such great development potential. It was on a street that had the rear part of the block facing onto another street. It wasn't just a laneway, it was a gazetted road. So it was a really great development site, plenty of room at the back with a beautiful character home at the front that needed renovation.
And were you anxious at all when there was that many offers to pay what you needed to? Or how did you feel at the time? Like, just take us back to that.
So, look, I did a feasibility on that property and I just squeezed it right down to where the bare minimum that I wanted to make as a profit margin. From memory, I think that was probably about 18%.
Okay.
And I had a couple of options with the property.
Still pretty healthy. I mean,
it was a healthy profit margin.
A lot of other investors tend to accept.
Yeah, exactly. You could probably say it goes down to 12 or 15% these days. But so I was pretty confident with the price. And look, it was $180,000 above asking. And so
it's not always about the asking price, is it? And that's a good lesson to unpack there as well.
Oh, exactly. There's so many other factors. And, one of the
investors like, oh, wow, I bought it 50 grand under asking. Well, yeah. How inflated was their asking, or
yes.
how well priced was the property? So.
That's right. You got to have that back up and make sure you can understand how to read value in a property, especially in this market. It's ridiculous at the moment. They can put any price on there. It's always offers above, and it's just how much above you want to pay. So
you felt comfortable in a figure, and how did that stack up compared to like what the agent was telling you and what you were feeling from it?
He didn't really give any guidance, and I think he knew he priced it quite low. Whether that was a strategy or mistake, I won't say because we had a chat about it after. But anyway, so I went and met the agent. So obviously I didn't turn up to the home open, but I said, look, I want to come on Monday because I couldn't get there. So I met him privately and we had a great conversation, got along really well. And then when I put my offer in, I made sure that the owners were understanding that we were going to renovate the property. We weren't going to demolish. So that was pretty important to me. I wanted to make sure that they knew that because their mother had lived there. They had a lot of family history. So if anyone was going to demolish that site, that probably would have cut them out. So I wanted to be clear on that. And, we weren't the highest offer, but we were the winning offer. So that's obviously the most important. Yeah.
What do you think got it over the line if you weren't the highest price?
I think it was a combination of things, having a good relationship with the agent, telling the owner or relaying the story to the owner.
About keeping the place and making
that's right,
renovating, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when the owner gets presented all the offers, they're just numbers on a piece of paper. And if there's a bit of a story behind one of those numbers, then there's emotion attached to accepting that offer. So that can always help, doesn't always help, but we always try to create a bit of a story. So to help get the offer over the line. And I think, we had a little bit of a lower LVR. I think it was about 70%. And that probably helped as well. So,
and you were subject to finance, and how much did you put on the conditions?
Subject to finance, it was pretty clean, but, I don't think it would have been too much better than anyone else's. I think it would have been 21 or 28 days. I can't remember now, finance, and then pretty standard settlement period, 3 weeks.
So the story really helped then.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
The agent, I guess his confidence that you're going to complete. And
that's right.
And a 70% LVR is, pretty strong. There's no lender's mortgage insurer involved. And
no, that's right.
It shows that you got a fair bit of cash behind you to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And, and I think that's a lot of it as well. No agent wants to sell a property and then realise the finance falls over and have to go back and do it again, So letting the agent know how strong the finance is really important, So I think that also goes to help. But so we ended up developing that property. We spent $133 on the renovation. I think we kind of budgeted 80, but blew out to 100. Obviously, costs were going up throughout that renovation. But
so what did you do? I've seen some of the photos as you went on Facebook. So tell us what you actually ended up doing.
It was a 3x1. The bathroom is really tiny and it had that typical sleep out the back. The floor in the sleep out had it was Jarrah floorboards, but it was on a bit of an angle. It was sloping, so it wasn't really usable. So we pulled up a few, realised there was a bit of rot in the timber. So we ended up demolishing the entire sleep out. We just supported the roof, demolished the sleep out. It was asbestos anyway. And we demolished the rear wall of the house, which led us into the kitchen, if you can imagine. So, and then we reconstructed the sleep out. I think that probably cost about $20,000 from memory to demolish and rebuild it. And within that sleep out area, we put a brand new bathroom in, really big bathroom, because the bathroom was quite small. And, we wanted to, if you're going to live in a nice renovated home and have a small family there, you don't want to have this cramped little bathroom. So we made a bit of a showpiece, huge bathroom with a freestanding bath and a nice and large shower area. And we converted the original bathroom into a laundry / bathroom. So it turned out really nice, polished up the floorboards. We ended up laying a slab where the old Jarrah floorboards were in the sleep out. And the idea was to tile over all of that and then tile into the living area. But when we got closer to it, we realised that you've got two different substructures there and you're going to have movement. Eventually you're going to get cracking in the tiles. So we ended up polishing the concrete and it just looked amazing. So we had polished concrete butting up to polished Jarrah and it just looked really good.
Yeah, cool.
Painted the house, redid the gardens, did the subdivision. I think the subdivision costs were about $85,000, which included moving a power pole.
Okay.
Which was
that is on the higher side, isn't it, for subdivision?
It is on the higher side. That also included getting DA for 2 townhouses out the back.
Okay.
So we've got the DA, it's all ready to go, but building costs are obviously super high. I think there's definitely money on the table to build, but it's more of a time thing. It's going to take 2 years to build pretty much from now. Yeah. So we're just kind of mulling over our options now, whether we want to go ahead with the build or...
Kind of ties you up a bit in the meantime too.
Well, that's it. That's exactly right. And
when the banks look at you and if you're trying to purchase something else, it's like, oh, here's this with no income. And
that's right. Yep. Yeah, that's it. And that's probably the biggest decision. There's definitely money on the table to do the build, but it's really the 2-year delay, and it's holding you back from other opportunities, that sort of thing. So we're kind of in the process of making that decision at the moment. Selling land isn't great at the moment. So that's not really, it is an option. And especially in an area like that, they're great little blocks. Yeah. So I think they probably will sell, but maybe not quickly and maybe not for the full market value, which is fine. That could be, a really good exit strategy as well. I like to keep things moving. So always looking for opportunities and, that might be an option just to move them on and look for the next one.
Yeah. And I guess I like to look at what is a property holding you back from. So if you get something else that is going to, be a better use of your money, then you can weigh that up at the time, I guess.
Exactly right. You it's opportunity cost as well. So you got to break it down on an annual level. How much money are you making per year for 2 years, and then weigh it up against another opportunity. There's a lot of thought involved, and you've also got the risk of where the market's going to be in 2 years. I'm pretty bullish about Perth, and I think we're going to be in a good position, but you never know. So you just got to weigh up all of those options as well.
Great. Well, thanks for taking us through that one. And did you have any other major learnings that have come out of this, and would you do things any differently?
I've probably adopted a new strategy. I mean, I've Airbnb before, but just while I've gone on holiday overseas for a few months. But with this one, we've Airbnb the front property, and that's been a good learning process as well. So, you hear a lot about high yields with Airbnb, but there's also negatives. But, we've had a pretty good experience. We've had a couple of guests. Both of those guests have been there for a couple of months at a time. So that's been a really good
You'd have to imagine process. That's not normally the norm. It's good if you can get people that have it for, that long.
Yeah, exactly. But, we put a minimum 7-day booking on there. So that kind of attracted that sort of guest. And we sort of knew that it might happen because there's a lot of people building at the moment and there's building delays. So they're needing to find that kind of medium term.
Yeah, just the way that the rental market is. Yeah,
exactly. The way the rental market is. Also people moving from over east to Perth. So they want to get here, be settled in a nice location while they look for their family home. That's happening quite a lot as well. So there's definitely a market for that at the moment.
Do you know how the banks look at the income from Airbnb? Because I believe most don't count it or, certainly prefer a fixed term tenancy with a normal tenant. Do you have any insight yet? Have you come up against that, or is it you haven't been back to them? Yeah,
so it's an interesting one. I think the banks like to look at it in a way that what is the market rent for that property? So, let's say we're earning $300 a night on that property. We're not going to get that on our application for a loan, I wouldn't think. If there's any brokers out there that think differently, let me know.
Get in touch.
Yeah, I think it's more the market rent for normally, but also, you've got things like if you bought it in a trust, then if you've got a year's income with Airbnb, then, maybe you could use that as income for the property because it's trust income. It's like a business income, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I guess there's quite a few considerations. Did you have furniture to set it up as well? Or was it your furniture and you kind of moved out and left it there?
That's exactly what we did. So we moved around a bit. So we were in Margaret River for 12 months.
Okay.
Came up to Perth, bought a bunch of furniture, moved into that property and realised we didn't really want to live in Leederville. I love the suburb, but, I'm a beach guy, so I love to go surfing. And so we wanted to be near the beach, and that's where I've always lived around the Wembley Down Scarborough area. So yeah, we're back in Scarborough at the moment, which is really good. And we've got the rent vesting strategy. So that's something I've done for a long time. I've lived in properties that I've owned before, but that can also hold you back on your investment journey. So when you rent a property out and then rent where you love living, then that's a really good strategy as well. And it's one that we've adopted.
Yeah, I started out rent vesting too. And you can live in lots of places that you wouldn't otherwise want to buy too as well. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I mean,
if someone's going to go and, want to live in the CBD for a while and be a part of all the action when you're younger, it makes sense to rent an apartment. You wouldn't necessarily want to own that apartment over the longer term either. You could probably do better things with your money. So
that's exactly right. I mean, I'm living literally on top of the sand dunes in Scarborough at the moment. There's no road between my window and the water.
Nice.
So it's probably not an apartment I would ever buy. I think they're worth about 1.5 million, but definitely somewhere that we can rent and enjoy that, So, you can do in that strategy, you can live exactly where you want to live and invest where it might be good for investing,
Yeah, good one. So I guess reflecting back on your journey so far, is there any other advice you'd give for people that are starting out?
Yeah, I guess.
Big question.
It is. I think education is clearly the first thing to start, open a book and just start reading magazines, jumping on the website. There's so many podcasts and YouTube videos to educate yourself with. And, you can just do that really quickly while you're traveling or commuting to work or anything like that. You could be educating yourself. And then it's a matter of, saving if it's your first investment and getting into the property market. Understanding that it's a long-term game is huge because so many people jump in and then 3 or 5 years later, they're like, our property's gone up 30, 40,000, let's cash in, or it hasn't gone up, let's get rid of it. And then that might be just before a big property boom or anything like that. I've seen it so many times before. And then if you just historically look back at 30 years in the market, 40 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, maybe not the last 10 years in Perth, but long term, then you're going to see that property will generally go up. And it's about being in it for that long-term game and have a long-term plan with a property. So another thing I would say is don't be afraid of getting your hands dirty, getting into a property and fixing it up, changing a few things, making it a little bit more attractive to rent and just raising that equity.
And definitely when you're starting out, I put a lot of sweat equity into things because, I couldn't afford to hire the painter, but, I'm around on my weekends and weeknights scraping walls and painting out, green rooms to neutral. Yeah. And, you do those things to get ahead, don't you?
Oh, exactly. That's right. And I think it's important, and it kind of gives you a little bit of pride in your investment property as well. I definitely don't do as much of it as I used to. I did a renovation in a 2-bedroom unit in Scarborough many years ago, and I think it took me 6 months because I'd start doing the floors and then I'd go surfing and then come back next weekend. And
maybe you should have chose a location that wasn't right next to the beach.
Exactly. Yeah, it probably wasn't the best idea. But then I worked out all that rent that I lost over that time is probably negated the gain that I made. So I've realised that let the pros do it, and usually it's a better job. But I wouldn't say don't do it yourself. Just make sure that if it's a job that needs a professional, then definitely let them do it.
And what would you say to people about whether to use a buyer's agent or not? And I know you're biased because you are one.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think having a buyer's agent kind of buys somebody time and property education as well. So if you're someone who is super dedicated to educate quite quickly, and you might be right into numbers. Look, like I did engineering for so many years, so I love graphs and statistics and that sort of thing, and love diving. Yeah. Nothing makes sense to me unless it's in a graph. So I think if you're that kind of person that really wants to dive deep and understand property data, and you have the time to trawl the internet and check all the property alerts, get in contact with all the agents and build up relationships. It does
take a lot of time to do it properly, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
And part of the trouble is you don't know what you don't know. So I think back and I think, I was doing a good job. But, I only knew a fraction of, how to do an amazing job in buying. So,
well, there's so many layers to it. And, and that's why I say if you're that way inclined, then go for it. And I think it's a great learning process because it's a great skill to have. But if, you don't have the time to go through and do all that, or you don't want to mix it up with all the other thousands of buyers out there, the retail buyers who are just buying off the internet, then, maybe a buyer's agent is someone that you'd want to get in touch with.
Well, we'll put your details in the show notes, and your buyer's agency is called Rise Property Buyers, isn't it?
That's the one, RISE, Rise Property Buyers.
Yeah. So you've touched on your outlook for Perth a few times, but what are you seeing for the year ahead? It'd be good to get your take.
Yeah, I'm actually extremely bullish on Perth. I think the interest rates, especially after yesterday, that was always going to happen, another 0.5% rise. Probably going to possibly throw some cold water on the market, but I don't think it's going to last a long time because at the end of the day, our stock levels are super low. I think we're at 8,500 properties, Jared. Is that about right?
Yeah, 8,230.
Well, there you go. Days on market is super low, 16 odd days. Yeah. And then we've been bouncing along the bottom there for a long time. So the fundamentals are there for growth, and people may just keep their toe out of the water for a little while because they want to see what's going to happen. And the media, all the news articles are saying 30% drops and that sort of thing. Yes, that may happen in Sydney because they're coming off the back of multiple upswings over a long period of time. Perth's coming off the back of a 5-year downturn. We've had all of the juice squeezed out of our market up until 2019. And we've had a 20% jump or whatever it might be, but that hasn't finished yet in my eyes. I think we've got a lot of ground to make up. Our affordability is at record lows. We haven't been this affordable since year 2000, around that kind of area. So I think we've got a lot of ground to make up, especially on those East Coast capitals.
Yeah, so couldn't agree more. You're preaching to the converted.
Yeah, there you go. So sunny skies for Perth, I think.
Yeah. And what are some of your future property plans? You've obviously got to see out what you do with your Leederville one. Have you got anything else on the cards, or are you just going to tread water for a bit?
Yeah, I think I'm always looking, obviously I look at property every single day. Yeah, it's a full-time job. It's what I love doing, and you can't not look at property. So I'm always looking for opportunities. I really want to start getting into a commercial. So I'm actually looking into a commercial development, wanting to do a small commercial development, whether that's warehouse or coffee drive-through or something like that, because there's such great yields with commercial, and a lot of those mum and dad investors the market's not flooded with those kind of investors. So, there might be a few more opportunities there. And
it definitely has its place, especially with rising interest rates. And I think it needs to be the right time for your portfolio too. And
yes, 100%.
I wouldn't be going out and buying a commercial like straight off the bat. That's my opinion.
No, that's right.
I'm sort of looking at adding some commercial in after I've added one more residential, just to start evening out the cash flow on some of my more negatively geared ones that'll provide the growth and increase the asset base, and then commercial to balance it out with a bit more income. And that's how I see it fitting in. So
100%, and that's such a good strategy. Obviously residential is great for capital growth and, growing that asset base. At some point in the game, you've got to have an exit game from your job, I guess. Everyone's eyeing that exit game, and most 99% of people's exit game is superannuation. And if you look at the statistics, that's just not going to cut it. So
you've got to ask yourself, do you love what you're doing, and how long do you want to do it for?
Yes.
If the answer to that's yes, you do love it, as I do. I'm not planning to ever really sell the business or get out of what I'm doing. It's just more doing more of the things I love day to day. But then you have your plan B, like if you did want to, I want the choice of doing that. Whereas other clients I speak to are like, oh, they need to get out of what they're doing. They need to bring forward their time horizon, So that kind of person's probably going to want to focus a bit more on income sooner and try to replace it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And, that's why everyone's strategy can be different. And that's why it's about setting your goals. And what are your goals? Do you want to retire at 50, or do you want to retire at 40? Or are you happy to work for, up until you're 60 years old? And all of those goals can be lined up with a different strategy. When you work backwards, start with your end goal and then just work backwards from there. And, you can kind of work out a plan over 20 or 30 years, whatever your time horizon is, and then start implementing.
Oh, well, that's probably a good place to leave things on. We can chat all day, let's face it.
I think so.
We do when we grab a coffee. So we'll have to catch up again some other time, and really appreciate you sharing your journey so far.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks a lot for having me, Jared. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, see ya.
For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. Just a reminder that the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature, as we don't know your specific situation. You should always seek professional advice before taking any action. I'll see you in the group.